Hello and welcome to Alchemist.camp, where we become better Elixir programmers by building things. Today we are going to finish off the StatWatch project, except possibly for the deployment. We started it last time, and where we last left our hero, aka you, the generation of the new Phoenix app was done. The previously purely backend OTP app was copied into it. We had set up a few routes, we set up some basic functionality, got everything working, but you can't really see what's going on in it. So here's our app. We have profiles, we have users, we have stats, which there's no route for, so I won't show you that. And we have no styling. In the front page, we still have like the default Phoenix framework picture in there. And the more functional app has styling. It shows the stats that are collected under each profile. And just to recap, for those of you who have not gone through the StatWatch playlist, this app gets your YouTube subscribers, videos, and views, and your Twitter followers, and your Alexa rank, and logs them once a day. So you can see the progress on whatever your project is. Actually, let's just go by this list here. So we are here, so let's add a view of the stats to the user, and that'll be in the profile show template. So we can see we have name, site URL, Twitter, YouTube, just as we have displaying here. So we'll say stats for, then add in the name. Well, we can get rid of this one. And then, of course, we need to add the actual stats. The easiest way to do this is just loop through each stat in the profile and put them in a table. So we'll make a new table, and we'll style it a little bit inline because we can. Table width of 100%. And we'll also style the table header and the table data to text align center. And we'll just leave it at that basic level styling. And inside the table, we'll have the table head and a row, and inside of that we'll have a bunch of THs, like 6. First we've got date time, then we've got subscribers, videos, views, Twitter followers, and finally Alexa rank. And I'm going to hold down Alt and Control and hit up a bunch of times. That gives me a bunch of cursors. I hit End, takes me to the line, and close the THs. There we go. Hit Escape to get back to one cursor. Thank you, Visual Studio Code. And then we close the TR, and we close the T head. Okay, so that's the header of our table, and actually let's make the closing of the table right here, and let's save it, and we can see it on the screen. That looks reasonable. I'm going to bump up the font a bit more. I'm sure not all of you are on huge monitors like I am. All right, now what we want to do is loop through all these stats and print out their data for each of them, and it's going to be each of these headers that we've got. So each stat's going to have each of those things. For stat in profile stats, do, and each one's going to have its own row, and then it's going to have a TD for each of its bits of information. Stat.inserted at date time has to be changed because date time is currently in a date time format, and we need a string. So date time to date, and then date to string. Do that. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, we've got the date times, and oh, we're going to need to handle it if there's any missing information. And actually, I'll just show you what happens if we don't. So td stat.youtube subs and close td. Oh, you know, Alchemist isn't missing any information. Let me see if I have another profile here. I have no other profiles. I'm going to make a new profile just because it'll be a better example. This one will be my old blog. There's no YouTube channel associated. So now we're showing stats, and it's never fetch stats ever. It's fine. We'll use this helper function we made last time. So fetch stats and save for a profile. And the profile is okay. We'll actually use the other helper we made so we can get the profile. So Logic Mason is StatWatch.core.get profile by name. Now that's odd. There is no name. Okay, we'll just get profile number 3. All right, so now StatWatch dot fetch stats and save. So it should save it. This should update, and then there should be a big problem because we have no YouTube. So it's going to say -1 subscribers, which is just silly, to be honest. And that's what we're going to fix. So we're going to make a little helper function, and we're going to call it handle missing. So handle missing is going to just be a little helper that will take stats that are -1 and turn them into something more readable. And we know it's not going to be anything like nil or some other kind of format because we've already got a force int function that's forcing them to be integers, and if they're nonsensical, they're -1. And we'll display a dash. And if there is an OK stat, then we'll just pass that through. So we've got a stat. Okay, no change because we haven't used that function. So here we'll do handle missing. And since this is an anonymous function defined right here in this file, we're going to have to use a dot syntax. And that should just handle it. Yeah, there we go. We get a dash, which is much more reasonable than what we had. And then our other rows are going to be very similar. So we're going to have one for, let's see, videos, one for views, followers, and Alexa rank. Videos, views, and then Twitter followers. Alexa rank. All right, good deal. Is there anything else? I think it's a little weird to say back because we weren't just looking at all the profiles. So instead of back, we're going to make this say all profiles. All right, sessions are going to have a few pieces. We're going to have a sessions login page. We're going to have a sessions controller. And we're also going to have something on the back end to deal with that from inside our accounts context. Let's start with that part. And this is tightly connected to auth and password hashing, but we're going to put that off as long as we can. The top part of the file is everything to do with users, and then the bottom part we have credentials. And for those of you who didn't see the previous video, credentials are where we're storing users' email address and their hashed password. It could be extended in the future to do other things like OAuth information. This is very similar to what's in the current up and running guide in the Phoenix docs. We're going to add basically a really dumb authenticate by email password function. And we'll just call it exactly that. And it'll take an email and it'll take a password that the user gave it. Then we're going to get a credential, repo.getBy, credential, and email, and we'll preload the user under that. So let's full screen this. Preload user. So we've got a couple of possibilities now. We'll use a cond since soon there will be more. The first possibility is we got a credential back. If that happened, since we don't have any password checking or anything like that yet, we'll just say OK and return the user. The other possibility is that didn't happen. And in that case, we'll return just our default, which is going to be error not found. Okay, with that done, the next thing we need to do is make our session controller, our session view, and our login page. So let's start with the session view. That's going to be super simple. Go to views, and you can see basically all the views are the same. And it's called session view. All right. Then the next thing is the session controller, which is going to be quite a bit more. So it's going to be a module, StatWatch web.session controller, and we're going to use StatWatch web controller because this is a Phoenix controller, and we're going to alias statwatch.accounts. All right, so first thing is new. We'll take a con, and it's not going to do anything with params, and then it's just going to render con and new.html. Let's make that new HTML right now. I'm going to make a directory for sessions actually. new.html.ex. See, we'll put everything in a div, and a new session is when you sign in. So we'll just say sign in. And then we need a form. Session path, which doesn't even exist because we haven't added sessions to the router yet. Create and method post as user. Then we need a function for our form. So this is a little bit non-standard. And a div class is going to be form group. And then we're going to need a text input for that form. That's going to be an email. Give it a placeholder that says email. And class form control, as is just the default in Phoenix Forms. And then we'll close the div. And then we'll copy this and make a password input. And instead of email, placeholder is going to be password. And same thing here, this is going to be password. And then we'll need a button. Submit login class. It's going to be button primary. And close that div. And in the form. So we'll add a route. We'll make a get login, and that's going to be session controller new, and we'll make a get logout. Session controller delete. Okay, let's go to login. Post login session controller create. Excellent. So we've already got an alchemist.camp@gmail.com and a password, just whatever I feel like, because we've got Windows 95 level security, and the create function is undefined. So we will continue onward, making out our session controller. So new was pretty simple. Create. So we'll make a couple versions of this. The first is if they forgot to put in anything, like they haven't entered an email or a password, instead of highlighting everything with errors, we're just going to send them a message and nicely ask them to enter those things. So email is blank and password is blank. Then we'll put flash error, please fill in an email address and password. And redirect to session path con new. And I forgot to quote the password. Okay, so if the email and the password are both blank, please fill in an email and password. And if we do, this should fail because there's no matching clause. All right, good. got a con, and now we do actually have a match. So the user is something that has, and this is actually a credential, but we're going to call it user because it makes more logical sense in here. It's got some email and it's got some password. Now we try to authenticate it with that function we just made in the accounts context. And right now, this is always going to succeed. So it'll say OK and give us a user. And then we'll put a flash on it. Info. Welcome back. And then we're going to record this in our session. Put session, we'll put it in our cookies. User ID and user.id. And we'll configure it to renew and then redirect to the base path. Okay, and if we get an error unauthorized, we'll put an error. Bad email password combination. And redirect to session path con new, which is where they already are in this case. And if we get the other error, not found, put flash error account not found. And we'll do the same there. Oh, that's kind of weird. Let's put those back where they belong. Okay. And that should be all the possibilities. Have we ended the case? No, we've not. All right, account not found. Excellent. Now we'll try it with a real account. And a crazy password because we can. Account not found. Very strange. Oh, okay. So no credentials in the database would explain why the account with that email can't be found. So we will create one. So cred equals email. I think email is all that's required. We don't have to have a password hash. Email is alchemist.camp@gmail.com. No, that's not what we want. We want that. To set the user ID. To 1. And then we'll insert it. Okay, now let's get our first user. Excellent. And we'll preload the credential. And we've got an email. Okay, so this may have fixed the problem. Credential does not have an association user. That's probably a belongs to problem. Credential does not have association user. Okay, so we'll fix that as well. Credential schema does not. All right. Okay, so instead of this line, we'll just say belongs to user. And then we've got to have the table in there too. So belongs to users and user. Okay. Recompile. Since it's part of the DSL, there's no colon, it just belongs to. I've got to re-get the credential. User, not users. Recompile. All right, that is finally what we wanted. Credential is preloaded in the user. Okay. And we're logged in. Excellent. And let's see if we can log out. Well, there's no logout button, but we do have a route. Session controller delete is undefined or private. As expected. Delete con and throw away the params. And basically just undo all the stuff that we did in the create. So configure session drop true. And put flash signed out and redirect to the base path. We're logged out. Excellent. All right, that's good. However, it would be really nice if we had feedback on whether if we were logged in or not. So I'm going to move create auth controller up in priority a little bit because this will make it easier to develop everything else. We'll just have more immediate feedback. So we'll go to controllers and create a new one. Auth controller .ex, and this one we're just going to call StatWatch.auth instead of auth controller, and that's because we're going to be referencing it a lot all over the place. And we want this to be usable as a plug, so we're going to import plugcon, and we'll import Phoenix controller. And we're going to need to alias StatWatch web.router.helpers. All right, then since it's a plug, we need to define an init function. And init will get the ops and a repo. This will become apparent later. If you don't understand that, don't worry about it. Then call is going to be executed every single time this plug is in a pipeline. Whoa, way over eager autocomplete. Don't want any of that. All right, so each time this is used in a pipeline, we're going to get the user ID out of the session where we put it when we log in. So get session con and user ID, and then depending on what we get, we'll do different things. So we're going to be testing, our condition is testing this match. So in a cond do, we're testing matches, and the first one that's true gets executed. If that doesn't end up being true, then you go on to the next one. So we try to match a user on con.assigns current user. If we can't do that, then we'll go on to the next match, which is user ID is a guard here, so we're just making sure we have a user ID. And a fall through. This is a little bit complicated, so let's go through it one step at a time. So remember, in a cond, we check one match, and if it evaluates true, that's it, we're done. We just evaluate that clause. If it doesn't, then we go to the next one. And if that one's true, then we're done. If it's not true, then we go to the next one. So at the bottom, we have a catch-all true, which just makes sure that we don't get an error from nothing being true. And the default behavior is we put current user into the con, and we say the current user is nil. So basically we say nobody's logged in. In this case, the top, we're checking to see if the con.assigns already has a current user. If it does, we don't do anything. We just pass the exact same con along to the next step in the pipeline. If there isn't already a user or a current user in the con, then we check to see if user ID is defined in the session. So if there is no user ID in the session, this will be false. We go to the default behavior and there is no current user. However, if there is a current user in the session, then we'll use the accounts context to get the user based on that user ID. And if that's successful, then we put that current user in the con. Now, there is no function to do this put current user con, so we've got to create that ourselves. And it's pretty simple. Put current user is just going to take a con and user, and we'll assign current user. So we'll just put that user in as the current user. And I'm also going to add in a check to see if the current user is the admin user. We don't have anything like that in our database. So the really simple way I'm going to do it for myself, which works perfectly fine in solo projects, is I'm just going to check if there's a user. And if there is, I'm going to check and see if the user has my email. So here, we just get the con, we put the user in it, and remember in some cases we're putting nil in it, which means nobody's logged in. And then we're also assigning admin user, and this double bang user just converts it to a Boolean value. So if the user is nil, we're just going to put false into admin user. If there is a user, then we check to see if the user has a credential. Same thing here. If this is false, we stop evaluating, because with ands, they only keep going as long as they're all true. Then if there is a user credential, we check to see if the email equals alchemist.camp@gmail.com. If it does, the current user is the admin user, so we assign admin user true. If not, we assign admin user false. Okay, we missed a parenthesis there. All right. Now, the next thing we need to do is make sure that this is executed before everything. So we're going to go to our router and put it in the pipeline. And since that was a plug that we just made, it has a call and an init, and it's taking a con and an ops, we can just say StatWatch.auth. And remember the ops that we had a moment ago? Go up to the top here in the init. We're taking ops and a repo. Now we can pass that repo into the plug. Now our statwatch.auth.call will be called before every single thing in the browser pipeline, which is all of this. Okay, so this is progress. It looks like now we have a problem where the email can't be found in the association, or it's not loaded. And that's because by default, Ecto doesn't preload associations. So let's go to our accounts. And from now on, whenever we get a user, we're also going to preload associations. And the ones we want are credential. And we'll also get profiles. That's plural, so let's say you have more than one profile. And when we list users, we're not going to list all the profiles because that might be a lot, but we will preload the email addresses. So credential. Notice the single atom syntax versus the list syntax. You can use either one. You could do a list of one atom, that works too. Okay, let's go back to our app.html.eex, or our layout, and let's make something to show who's logged in. So this will be in the upper right hand corner of the screen, and we'll just show current user. Actually, we can't show a whole user, so we'll just show the user's name. And this will work if we have a user logged in. If we don't, we'll get an error because this current user will be nil and you can't access nil.name. So we'll add a guard right above it that says if current user do. And then we'll have an end. So that won't even get executed if nobody's logged in. So here we go, Ben, and get started. Now the styling leaves a little bit to be desired. Also, we could make it into a link. I think that would be a little bit nicer. So we'll say link current user. Oh, and actually it should be username, not name. Current user.username and we'll link that to user path, show current user.id. And the ID is optional. If we don't have the ID there, it will just show the current user. All right. Now it's showing the username. And now that it's a link, the styling is also in line with the other. We'll have to do something about that image though, because I don't like it being bumped up. We'll log the user out. Awesome. All right, that part is good. Now the next thing is we need to make it so the users can enter their own information, their own credentials, instead of us having to enter it from the command line like I just did for the first user. All right, we're going to do a quick change of plans here. StatWatch Phoenix is a bit larger of a project than it had initially appeared, so we're going to wrap up today's video here with just the sessions done, and then next video we'll do the auth and we'll get into some annoying things that Windows users have to suffer with bcrypt, getting that to compile and everything to work so you can hash your passwords. We'll also do role-based authentication so that certain parts of the app will be visible only to admins, other parts will be visible to anyone, other parts will be visible to any logged in users, and still others will only be visible to the same user whose information is being displayed. And then we're going to wrap it up, do some odds and ends like this about page, for example, a little bit of styling, although I'm just going to be pasting in the HTML for this page. But we're going to finish everything else in the app except for the deployment, which will be a fairly short video. So stay tuned for more and see you next time.